Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. This is Flash 4, and the session is called The Internet is for Everyone, Overcoming Disabilities and Limitations. The first question I ask is, where does The Internet is for Everyone come from? Anyone know? Oh, that is correct. That is correct. So I remember being in Portugal where, this was my first EuroDIG event, and there was a big sign that said the internet for everyone. I was very happy to take a photo there, and it stuck with me because it is true. The internet is for everyone, and we need to make sure that there are no barriers for anyone who has any kind of limitation. Okay, so the session is going to be very interactive, but I will show a few slides just to cover a few of these things. But in any case, there is a limitation, to be honest. There is a limitation, which is these microphones work, but they don't pick up the room. So if you want to speak, you have to come down here, which is perfectly okay. So it's very flexible, okay? So let me just share my screen, and I will start showing things. This one is dark. I'm not sure if that's supposed to happen. This one disappeared.
No, it's not, but please continue.
That's okay. Oh yeah, you can see it. Okay, so this is the symbol for welcome, and welcome is like this. So anyone know what kind of language this is? Sign language, right?
Yeah.
Okay. However, sign language is not all the same. This is welcome in, as far as I could tell, I cannot guarantee this, but as far as I can tell, something like 20 languages. But it's not for all languages. That's the part that we don't really know. So if you have an interpreter in a conference, they will probably interpret the English language, but not all the languages of everyone. We think, oh, these are all the same. They are actually not, okay? The same way that if you have Braille, and if you write Braille, you're going to get that in the specific language like English, French, etc. You're not going to get that in a universal language that covers everything. This makes no sense, okay? So we have to be specific. And even within certain countries, there's more than one type of sign language, so it's different. Okay, I did mention I have some slides, so these are just a few. Remember this? So during the pandemic, everyone was at home. This is Teams. We are using Zoom, same thing. And one of the things that we have is we cared at the time, and we still do in some cases, about subtitles, right? Because while we are there, sometimes we cannot hear people correctly, so we use the subtitles. Guess what? When I was in a different room just before, I was actually using the Zoom, and it had the subtitles there, which helped a bit. And if I needed to, let's say that this was the big room, and if I wanted to see something in detail and I was in the back, I could just use the Zoom, on my computer and actually see up close. This is perfectly normal. It's a help. You don't need to be in the front just for this. If the technology allows you to be remotely and access things, why aren't you at the conference doing the exact same thing and still having double screen, a screen here if you cannot read properly to the screen, and still be in the conference and attending the conference. Okay, so let me mention a few things about just checking about inclusion. So we need to consider that there is legal frameworks associated with inclusion, disabilities, and these are actually quite important. So in the 90s, there was an initiative started called All Different, All Equal, which focused mostly on racism at the time, but people have started to use this for other reasons. And you can expand this to everything, including, of course, any kind of disability. And this is important because everyone is supposed to be handled and treated exactly the same way, okay? Treaty of the European Union mentions equality, mentions human dignity, and human dignity here in many constitutions actually defines the situation where someone who has a disability, for instance, can you imagine if I take these things and put them by the door for the next person to come in? Let's just leave this here to see what happens. Okay? No, it's okay. Something can happen. I'm not sure. You cannot see it from the camera, but there's like a big, cube just by the door. We'll see. Someone goes in, they have some difficulty coming in. This is normal, okay? I don't think we've seen anyone in a wheelchair at this moment, but even like this will block someone from coming in, okay? Don't worry, it's not a fire hazard. It's nothing like that, okay? So to actually guarantee that we have equal rights for everyone is very important. And I've done, I've presented similar slides to this in similar sessions in other countries. And I kind of decided to have a look at each of them. So for instance, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights mentions disability specifically, but the other one that they actually mention as well is old age. Okay, when we consider disabilities, we never consider the old age. And honestly, everyone is going to get old. Their vision is going to get worse. Their hearing is going to get worse. Their mobile abilities are going to get worse. This is normal. Okay, so someone who is, let's say, young, 18 years old, and has some serious disability will be pretty much the same as someone who is 80 years old with a similar disability as well. It's not going to be that much different. The solution is the same for both. We have technology to solve problems for both people, okay? Okay, wrong door. Okay, but there are, most of these situations, if not all, of course, are, and this is well described as situations beyond a person's control. You don't get disabled by option. This happens, okay? And if that happens, you need to fix that problem, hopefully with some kind of technology. Now, for instance, I checked a few constitutions. The Czech Republic mentions dignity, health problems in general, old age specifically as well, which is good, working capacity, etc. So they do specify this, although if you go for many constitutions, sometimes they don't refer some of these words, and this is actually important. Okay, by the way, I don't want to make this session a legal session. I want to make it a technical session. I'm just giving some introduction that might have fitted in yesterday's accessibility session, okay? So anyway, Constitution of Slovakia, just next door, they actually mention a lot of situations regarding any kind of disability. So they are actually focusing on that. And the constitution that they have is from 1992, when they broke apart from the Czech Republic. So they actually mentioned this in great detail, right? So in Portugal, we mention social dignity and social circumstances, and that kind of covers the whole thing. And then the law itself, not the constitution, will guarantee the inclusion for everyone. So we don't specifically have disabilities, although in theory, we do have equality for many other circumstances that most constitutions even don't consider. But this, for us, it's the social dignity part that we use as equivalent to guarantee that everyone will be treated in the same way. Anyway, Swiss constitution, also interesting because physical, mental, or psychological disabilities, so guaranteeing eliminations of inequalities that affect people with disabilities, so very important to cover. I think I have just one more, Constitution of Mexico. So, many people have Mexico as a bad reputation in some of these cases, but it's really not. They actually cover a lot of these things. So things like health protection, and then diseases, disability, elderlies as well, which is something no one actually considers. So it's actually important to consider this, okay? Now, let's actually talk about these things, and please feel free to interact. Just raise your hands. Just if you need to talk, you do need to come here, okay? If you are remotely, also exactly the same thing. You are more than welcome to interact if you are remotely. And we have two amazing people here that will detect if you want to speak, and will let you speak. Okay, very important. Okay, so what kind of things require accessibility? So we were looking at this room here, and I put something there which is kind of harmful for someone who can go in, so it is an obstacle. But if you go down this stairs, you actually see one of those things that hold the chairs all the way down from stairs. So the building clearly is not new, but it is a building that was modified to be accessible for new. Now, if you have new buildings, let's say in the last 10, 20 years, you are kind of mandated, at least in the European Union, you're kind of mandated to make sure that it is as accessible as possible. So no stairs, no kind of issues. This kind of thing here would be a problem because there is a lot of stairs going up. But if you have some, let's say a wheelchair, you literally do not have a table to use, right? This is a problem. So in this case, maybe you can guarantee that there is logistics that handle this kind of problem, but it's still not by default. So you have to adapt it, okay? There's also a lot of infrastructure that is in existence. And although Vilnius, for instance, is a very old city, it's been quite remodeled, and we see that there is accessibility everywhere. So it's quite good, but other cities do not have this, including universities and many other scenarios, right? Okay, public transportation, trains. How many of you have seen trains that have this gap in some places, right? It's terrible, isn't it? And sometimes the gap is not just this, it's this sometimes, or this, which is even worse, right? So it's very difficult in some cases to be able to go in or out, okay? And I mean, even trains in Germany and in other places, you have to go up some stairs and things. So if you have a wheelchair, and of course with transportation, most of the problems will be related to mobility, because if you cannot hear, for instance, you can see on the screen, etc. So notices and all of those can be kind of worked around in easier ways, but the mobility is still a problem, okay? I know a lot of people who have wheelchairs, and the biggest problem is I cannot go anywhere because I have limitations. I cannot go here or there. An example is, so buses nowadays, they have buses with lowering things so that you can go in, so that's okay, but not all of them have this. In fact, most of them don't have this in most of the European Union still, okay? But planes are even in a worse problem. They have a legal obligation to put people on the plane, but it's definitely not comfortable. They have to pass to a smaller chair, and it's very uncomfortable, etc. So this is not a good treatment for people, okay? For instance, if you go for the UK could have used the train for someone who has a wheelchair, but the prices are so expensive that people actually fly, okay? Let's not even mention what this does to the environment, but this is terrible from a point of view, from a social point of view as well, okay? So now we get to the part that we talk mostly in this session, which is the internet, okay? So if you consider social media, so Facebook, Twitter, or the social network formerly known as Twitter, and then you consider apps on your phone, on your computer, etc. All of these might have problems. E-commerce websites, most of the ones that I've seen do not guarantee WCAG rules, the basic rules, okay? And these are people who have any kind of disability. They want to go to the website and they want to shop, okay, like everyone else. And they are prevented to doing something like this, okay? For instance, one of the things that you have, and this was mentioned in the previous session yesterday, is the situation of the pop-ups. So for instance, if you go to a website, pop-ups, okay, if you are blind, this is impossible to solve, because even if you're not blind, sometimes the X there, you need a microscope to find it, right? So it's really, really terrible. But you have to hover the mouse sometimes on a place, try to find it, to get rid of it. It's very annoying. The thing about the cookies, do you allow cookies? That is even more absurd, because legally, you don't even need to ask to put cookies there if the cookies don't store personal information. So they put it there because they want to add some useless things that they can make money off. But if they just have a basic website, they can just say, oh, we kind of use cookies so you can warn them, but it doesn't store personal information, so we're not going to ask you. It's okay. You don't have to block someone from going in. If you go to media, websites like newspapers and things, pop up, pop up, pop up. And it's impossible for someone who is blind to actually be able to use it. I can tell you that a few years ago, and this is very ironic, about 10 years ago, they did a new website for the place where they do the Euro Millions in Portugal, right? And that website was built 10 years ago. And the institution that manages it is an institution that cares and funds social projects like disabilities, etc. The website itself, I am an IT person, and at the time perfectly easy for me to use a mouse, etc. The menus are zigzagging and I lose the menus on the way. It's impossible to manage, okay? 10 years later, it's still like this, okay? And this is the absurd part. They didn't change this, okay? 10 years later, and they are helping people who are blind, helping people with disabilities, especially in this case, a mobile disability where you cannot use the mouse. If I use a touchpad, half the times it falls out of the range of the menus and it fails. So this is a very big problem. If you have any of these disabilities, the websites fight against you in this case, okay?
What's WCAG?
Good question. The question was, what is WCAG? Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, okay? So we are at version 2 point something at this moment. Version 1 was not so good. That's okay, it did basic stuff. Version 2 is quite a bit better, but the thing is, you don't need to implement the whole of it, okay? You just need to implement 2 or 3 key things. So for instance, you should implement things like the alt texts. So the alt text, actually mentioned there. So the alt text is when you describe an image, okay? So when you describe an image, you don't need to really describe, oh, this is a room with blue chairs and there are a few people sitting. I don't care about the blue part. If you are blind, no one cares. But you do care that there are a certain number of people here. They are maybe informal, maybe formal. So describe the room. You don't describe the colors. You don't describe them like you describe a landscape. You describe the human scenario that's associated with this. So this is one of the things that fails in social media and many others when they use alt text automatically. They generate a description of the image, but it is a description from a from a catalog point of view, not from a human point of view. That's why you can go to Facebook, you can go to Twitter, and you can LinkedIn as well. Oh, please come in. Let me ask you a question. Please come here. Sure. Let me ask you a question. Did you have some difficulty getting in?
No.
Because of that thing over there?
No, it was fine.
Was fine? Oh, you're not answering the question correctly. We were kind of hoping that you had some difficulty doing it.
We're the guinea pig, Carl.
We were trying to see if people have any problems getting in despite the obstacle, but this is okay. No worries, no worries. But please join us. I did try, but the obstacle was still very available for people to go through. Anyway, I mentioned alt text, so this is very important that most of these websites, I mentioned Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn as well, and a few others, you can actually write the alt text yourself, adapt it, and guarantee that the text there actually explains what you are seeing. So that is a good thing. Access keys. Any of you know what access keys are? You might not know it, but in some computers you use Control, some computers you use Alt, and then you say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And these correspond to links. Okay, so if you go to places like Facebook, these links correspond to something. I have no idea what it is because I don't need to use them. But if I have a website and I have menus on top, I want to have Alt 1, Alt 2, Alt 3, Alt 4, so that I can get the menus directly. Okay, there's even other things with the websites where you can actually have a hidden menu on top with links, so that someone who is blind will be able to see it, but it is hidden from our normal view. But the links are there that jump directly to the parts of the page that you care about. And this is the first thing that they see. They don't see absurd headers and funny things and useless things. They see that thing directly, okay? And that is the important part, okay? Also, you can add a few things like if someone is blind, for instance, exclude them from watching advertising, for instance, because sometimes it's clearly not suited for them. They're not going to click that button, and it's just trash that a reader might have to read, and they're not going to use it. Okay. So anyway, HTML tags. Okay, welcome. HTML tags are tags that you can consider that sometimes use tables. So, for instance, you saw the EuroDIG table for all of the event, which is fine, okay? That is used for that correct purpose, which is a table format, but sometimes people use tables for, embellishing the website, and that is wrong. There is other types of tags that are suited for that kind of thing. Colors as well, so if you are colorblind on a specific color, this is bad. So usually the black and white kind of colors, they usually work okay. But if for some reason they don't, this is okay. It's a technical difficulty. That is okay. So, but all of these situations mean that I've been to some websites where they use colors. And by the way, if you are colorblind, it doesn't mean that you have to use the red color. Okay, it doesn't mean you can see it or not see it, because there is color blindness for all colors: reds, green, blue. Really depends on the person. Okay, so the colors, you have to be careful. You cannot fix the problem. Oh, thank you very much. You cannot fix the problem for everyone. Oh, it's the other one. Oh, Sandra, one question, please. Did you have some difficulty getting into the door because that thing is there? I'm trying, but thank you anyway. Okay, guys, join in. Maybe we can ask the next people. Okay, but this was an experiment from the camera. It's not visible to see. There are some cubes here that we tried to put in front of it. Okay. Oh, welcome. Okay. So anyway, let's mention one more for especially e-commerce and a few other sites, which is not a robot. You have to click there. How are you going to find the images? Select all the images that have, I don't know, food in it. There is no way, because a person is blind, they will not be able to do this. And yes, sometimes there are alternatives which are using sounds, but trust me when I say it's terrible anyway, okay? Sometimes you have those that say, write the letters. How many of you guessed that the first time? It's almost impossible, isn't it? You have to try 2 times, 3 times. Imagine if someone is blind, you're just gonna guess. It's impossible. Imagine someone who has difficulty seeing. You can still see, but you don't see it correctly. So you're going to have the same difficulty. And now AI can actually see, oh, just, thank you. But AI is gonna be able to detect those letters much better than we do. So it's an added difficulty for us that doesn't prevent you from detecting if you are a robot or not, okay? So we are past that point. Now we have different technology. We need to consider other ways to detect if we're human or not, okay? And if there's a good way, I have no idea, okay? But so far, I haven't seen a good way to detect humanity. But anyway, flash sites. So these were kind of killed like 5-10 years ago, so I hope they really don't come back. But they were impossible for anyone who had difficulties because they were completely inaccessible. It's like you see a big block of black, black dots over there. You cannot do anything with it. It's just impossible. Flash sites looked really nice. No one could use them for accessibility, okay? Anyway, let me just mention that some accessibilities address multiple problems. Did anyone have issues with anyone break a leg, an arm, etc.? Yeah, well, okay. And you were with some difficulties for many months, right? So you cannot do the regular things that you used to do, have to adapt somehow. Is this correct? Yeah. Okay. So a few years ago, during the pandemic in the summer, I had some problem with my eyes. So I had what's a temporary problem, which is not perfect now, but I don't consider it a problem at this moment. And my eyes became in a weird way that I just saw blurred things. So during the whole summer, this was amazing. I tried to drive like that guy in the cartoons, the old guy that runs over everyone in that really old cartoon. But it was very difficult to be able to do normal things, even look at a computer, because I just saw blurred. I literally had to change the resolution of my computer to make it bigger so I can see the letters bigger. And this is something, and I'm used to very small things, and it made a big difference. 2 months later, I was kind of okay, not perfect anymore, but kind of okay. And then a year later, I had the exact same problem. And at the time, my experience was, oh, I'm getting blinds. This is going to be terrible because, I work in IT. What can I do now? Right? But the thing is that there are technological problems, technological solutions to solve these problems. And I know a lot of people who are blind that actually work in IT as well, okay? So to speak like this, I could be blind, this is fine, no problem. Speaking is easy, but to actually work in a computer, that will always be a bit difficult. So I was kind of confident that no matter what happens to me, the technology will help me. But can you imagine someone who's not aware of these technologies stressing out? I was stressing a bit, okay? Can you imagine someone not seeing anything and just stressing out completely, okay? I can see my cat, but it's like a ton of hair that's the same color and you cannot understand how it goes, okay? But anyway, some situations are temporary and some other ones become permanent, okay? Oh, go ahead.
So how would it be a website that is accessible for blind people, for example?
That is a good question.
Website that has a version that click and then
let me repeat the question in case, because people remotely might not be hearing this. So what does a website look like for someone who's blind?
Yeah.
So it can be a normal website. It doesn't have to be different. A blind person will not see the images, okay? So technically speaking, I'll give you an example. You take the CSS of the website and you kill the CSS. That's all you need to do. You go to the thing that says link.
What is the CSS?
you kill the CSS.
What is the CSS?
Oh, sorry about that. So the CSS is cascade styling sheets. It's what makes color to the website. Thank you for asking, because it is a good idea to clarify. Thank you. That actually defines all the way it looks. And if suddenly you have a website without CSS, it just looks very sequential, which is a good thing. So if you are testing a website for you to give the website, into production and make sure it's accessible, kill the CSS and look at it, very black and white, very basic stuff without coloring, without formatting, etc. Because a blind person does not care about that. Just read what you see in the websites. And that actually works really well, because you can see exactly the things that are there. That hidden menu that I mentioned on top, we do not see it, because CSS will hide it. A blind person will see it in the beginning and jump directly to the right places all around.
Just read it out, or how would that work?
Let me get to the next slides, if that's okay. No, but it is a good question. Let me get to the next slide and explain how this can be seen. Okay, let me just mention this last part, and then I promise we'll go to that slide and to answer actually both questions. So some of these things have a technological solution. So I'm suggesting some of these. Some of these solutions are on the client side, let's call it like that. So the client has a screen reader, has something else. But on the server side, on the provider sides, you also need to guarantee that you have this. A website needs to be accessible, respect WCAG rules, respect other things, okay? So that needs to be accessible a bit, so everyone does the effort. So there is a technology on one side that will help you read it, and there's a human on the other side to make it easier for you to read it, okay? So not putting cubes in front of the door, for instance, okay? So in other cases, you just need a human solution. How many times have you seen someone old crossing the street? Oh, I'm carrying a lot of weight. Just help them out. It's not really a problem. There's no technological solution for this other than a shopping cart or something like that. But sometimes you can help. It's just a small difference, and you can definitely help and make their day a bit easier, at least one day. Okay. So one other thing is, this was actually something that I considered when we were looking at the other accessibility session, which is, why don't you have in schools accessibility training? It doesn't require much. It's like, basic things like, what do you do in the case of an earthquake? What do you do in the case of this? What do you do if there's someone who's blind? How do you help them? For instance, never pet the dog of someone who's blind, those kind of things, okay? Well, you can do it if they say it is okay. So you say, oh, you have a nice dog. Yes, okay. While they're using the harness, you cannot touch them. As soon as they remove it, they become normal dogs that want to play. But they have rules, so we need to respect those rules. If you go and pet them, the dogs will become distracted, and that could kill someone who's blind crossing the road, okay? So this is important to know the rules of the game, let's call it like that, okay? Anyway, let's talk about visual situations. So many options. One of them is this, screen reader, braille reader. So what you do is you typically put that under the keyboard. Someone who is blind can actually write things perfectly normally, okay? It's okay because the keys have F and J, have some indentation so you know where the keyboard is. It's okay. However, that part is very difficult to read. I tried it, okay? I have a friend who's blind that works in IT, and they had like 2 of these, so I tried them. I'll just try them. I'll put a phrase there, and you can just try it. I don't have the sensitivity in my fingers. Well, if I was actually blind, I would probably have to deal with it, and eventually I might get that sensitivity, but it might take a year or 2, okay? And there is a misconception that everyone who's blind can actually read Braille. They don't, okay? I can see the dots and things, and I can kind of recognize them, but if I look at them, I might be able to understand what they are. It's like, binary code or something like that. You kind of decode what it looks like, but it's not something that's viable for me as with the knowledge that I have, with the experience that I have, to actually do it quickly. It's not easy, okay? It's like learning, for instance, Cyrillic or Japanese or Greek or something. It's letters that you are so not used to them that you cannot simply just read them. It takes time. It takes a year. It takes 2 years. Okay. Now, a few examples of this are, for instance, if you go to a website, and this is for this session, let me go and select the session here. Okay. Right click. By the way, my mouse is not working. Small problem as well. So you can go here and say read section aloud. Okay. Oh, thank you. So read section aloud. This is an option. Okay, I'm not going to do it. You believe me. There is a sound. You believe me. Okay, but you can go to read the immersive reader. What if I had some visual difficulty that was different? Maybe I can read it in yellow. Maybe I can read this in a different color. Maybe this color is better for me. All the eyes are different. Oh, go ahead.
That is exclusively for the Internet Explorer or like Google Chrome or
So this one is Edge. Other technologies, for instance, Microsoft technologies, all of them have this immersive reader. Other technologies like Google Chrome and a few others, I think they have their own technologies for this as well. They might not be exactly the same, but they do have these kind of things, okay? And this is something you don't have to do anything. They're just there, you can just use them. If you know someone who could use this, just give them that information because most people don't even know about it, okay? So different colors, different sizes. Oh, I need bigger, need smaller. Text spacing. Oh, I need spaces between the text to read it better. And this is something that actually exists, okay? Are you okay reading this? Maybe this is different. Some of you might not be able to read this correctly in some colors. What about different fonts? Is this better for someone? No? So this one, different one, this one, different one. So all the fonts are different. And these three apparently were chosen from some scientific logic that they say that these are so different that people tend to go to one of these three. Maybe there's more, but these three actually cover a lot of the logic, the spectrum of the way that we can process the information. So these are not just limited for anyone who is visually impaired. In this case, it's when you have neurological disabilities that you can actually see this in different ways, so it's easier. Okay. Also, if you are someone with any cognitive impairments, for instance, difficulty reading, etc., just give them this, separate the words. There's actually an extra step that's not here, that you can actually separate verbs and nouns with different colors, so you can actually do that so that people can read it better. So there's something that will help you. At the same time, let's say that you have a problem focusing. So you can actually go here and, give me a second. Sorry, I have a bar on top of this from the share, so I cannot see this. So you can actually do something like this, and you can gradually see things, okay? So this is something that you can definitely do. It's at your fingertips. It's available now. It's free. No one has to pay anything for this, okay? Translation might be a thing, okay? We don't consider not knowing a language a disability, but technically it is a difficulty, isn't it? So not knowing would be easier. But translation, we know that there's translation in every browser, so it's easy enough, okay? Read aloud is the same read aloud, so easy enough as well, okay? So for visual blindness, so what if it is color blindness? Well, you can actually adopt many ways in your operating system that you say, oh, I don't want to see these kind of colors, okay? Or if these kind of colors exist, change them to something else, okay? It's very, very easy. Another thing that you probably know exists, but I will go when I show this next. So in visual terms, all of these exist and they are very easy to handle with some of these technologies. What about hearing? You have a hearing problem, right? No problem. Control Windows L. You have to configure it first, by the way. Give me a second. Shows up there, right? So all of it is actually working properly and telling me exactly what I do. If you have a YouTube video that doesn't have subtitles, run it through this and say, I want to capture the YouTube video that's playing on my computer. It shows up. You can change the colors, by the way. This is like a very neutral color. You can change to yellow, whatever you want, put it on top, bottom, etc. It's in the middle for demonstration. Go ahead, please.
Is this an app or?
Part of Windows 11. Control Windows L, but you have to go and configure it first in the settings. But
I just find it very interesting, but I was thinking about more like the people with blind eye disabilities. They're not completely blind, but they don't see much. Do you know of any like programs on the computers to like, because I have a person in my family that has on like 10 to 20% of vision, and just like to see the icons on the screen, like to navigate on her, if you know of anything.
okay, let me repeat the question. The question is, what if someone is not totally blind, but only 10–20% of vision? The answer here is maybe increase the size of the font, very big, of course, have a big screen. I used to work with someone that required a huge screen, and then their resolution was 640 by something. So we're really like icons were this size, okay? And this is okay, you know. I thought, well, I could do wonders with this monitor, do a lot of things here. But this makes sense because someone needs such a big monitor, so you can adapt it. In terms of the reduced vision, sometimes it comes with certain types. By the way, let me just close this off. Okay, visual. So you can have a narrow field, so you can only see parts in some cases. So depending on what the blindness is associated with, there will be technological solutions for this. Okay, one has to look case by case, but there are solutions for this thing as well. Okay, so in terms of hearing, you can have subtitles, and these are quite universal. The only thing they don't do is translate. Okay, however, if you think, oh, they don't translate, that's terrible, great. You go here for PowerPoint, just start a PowerPoint presentation without anything there, and just add the subtitles there. Okay, and those subtitles are the same. You just pretend that you are presenting something, you add the subtitles, and that you can convert to a different language, okay? It is included. So that's a nice trick that I usually use if I go and present sessions for a country that might require subtitles, something like that. I will add the subtitles there as well, okay? So very practical. And this comes with the PowerPoints, so it's very easy. If I can find how to turn it off, that's a different problem. Okay, so anyway, what if you have no voice? That is also difficult, right? Well, not that much. The same way you can do the read aloud, you can actually write things in Word and say, read aloud, okay? And someone else will read it for you, okay? It's not a difficult thing. We've seen since the 80s that people like Stephen Hawking, they also got the text, so they used some techniques with the face, etc., to be able to write the things into the computer, and then the text generated. What we see in the films like The Big Bang Theory, etc., where the guy was a guest, this looks all very nice because the guy answers very quickly. He might take 2 or 3 minutes to answer in writing, and then that generates the sound very quickly, okay? But you can have voices that are completely natural. Stephen Hawking decided, I like this voice, everyone knows me with this voice. This is true, everyone knows me with this voice. I don't want a better voice, I want this one. Okay, but you know, other people will probably prefer a normal voice. If you are remotely, many people work. If you are blind, the pandemic was perfect for someone who's blind. You can now work from home. You can go to the office once or twice a week, but you're now no longer mandated to actually go every day. It's quite amazing, isn't it? So in this case, you can actually be comfortable. In fact, that actually expands to things like if you have anxiety, if you have autism, if you have other situations that I list in front of this. But the fact that you can stay at home now, and it is normal socially to be at home and work from home, it's great for anyone with these kind of situations because they can be more comfortable. If you are comfortable, come to the office. If you're not comfortable, stay home and do your work, okay? So this is a very different world in the last 4 years. No, but anyway, voice limitations, any kind of voice limitations, for instance, what if you have a tracheotomy? You can no longer speak, okay? This is a problem that might be permanent. But if you write it down and literally just say what I'm saying, writing it down, you know, most people are fast enough to write things almost the speed that's what they are saying. And if you are in a meeting, blah, 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 blah. Great, okay, this is normal. It's not a limitation. You need the equipment, but it's not a limitation, okay? So mobility. So we tried the guys. Welcome. Did you have difficulty with the cube? It was in front of the door. Did you have difficulty with that?
Not at all.
I'm putting the cube in the wrong place. Okay. So anyway, if you have mobility issues, it kind of depends what it is. So we've seen people here in the event. Okay, I know. We've seen people here in the event that have crutches. That's fine. Okay, you know, you can still work around, and that works really well. If you have a wheelchair, you can also work it out. Also perfectly okay. And it doesn't limit you, at least not on this location, it doesn't limit you from doing anything, okay? What if you have paralysis all the way up to here? Stephen Hawking was the case here. There is also technology. I have to admit that in the 80s, someone had to be very famous to get that kind of thing, otherwise you would not get it, okay? So it's a rich thing or a famous thing, a VIP thing, that he got that thing that he got, okay? But if you consider now, most of these technologies are available for you, okay? And they are available very cheap. And in the European Union, most of the countries, I'm not saying all, but most of the countries actually have funding in the National Health Services to provide these kind of things for the people for free, okay? And this solves problems. It's a technological solution for a problem, okay? Anyway, neurological. So I talked about autism and some issues. If you are, you prefer to be at home, you prefer to be in a controlled environment, great. We have the possibility of staying at home. Zoom meetings, which you might think they are a stress for most people, because in the beginning they were for everyone, okay? I was kind of used to this because I've been doing this even before the pandemic. But for most people, oh, I have a Zoom meeting, I have to spend 1 hour preparing and then 1 hour recovering. Someone who is with autism or other similar types of issues, and I mean similars here deliberately because there's quite a lot of different situations. In the beginning, it was very stressful. And I know a few people in that area that they stressed a lot. They had a lot of anxiety, a lot of problems. But then they figured out it's still better than going in person. So this is very nice. So I can get used to this. I'm at home. If I need to turn off my camera, I have some more privacy and I just speak when I want to, or write down in the chat if I want to. I don't want to talk. I don't want to be exposed visually, and that solves problems. Okay, technology solves problems. Okay, this is another situation. So if you are, for instance, for this one, it's more of a human solution here, okay? So if you have things like cognitive delay or let's say attention deficit disorder or attention deficits hyperactivity disorder. So if you are hyperactive or any of the ranges that exist there, sometimes it's difficult for you to manage things. You need to focus a bit more. So even a teacher, for instance, showing graphical things with more interesting things other than just writing down on the chalkboard might make that interesting for the person to pay attention, okay? I had a student like that the students kept getting distracted with a lot of things, but then in the end, I tried to focus on doing mostly demos, not slides. And in the end, the student came up to me. It didn't feel like he was paying attention, but in the end, he told me, oh, I paid attention to this. And I could tell, oh, his problem is that he doesn't have like cognitive delay. He just has a slight hyperactivity that gets distracted easily, okay? That is fine. If you can capture the attention, it helps out, but that also requires other things from you that apply to other people, not just in this particular situation. Now, almost at the end, and I know we're running out of time, degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson, and even old age that we talked about, they actually fall into some of these previous categories, okay? I'm not going to detail that there is a specific scenario for this because anything that we talked about before, this falls into those categories one way or the other, okay? And then there's the last one, which is environmental. So anxiety, stress, overwhelming. This applies if someone is autistic as well. So this might be just the stress that you are currently having. Oh, I don't have a job, I'm stressed, etc. This actually affects you as well. So although in many cases, this is not an accessibility by itself, but it's a temporary situation that you have to deal with. Social conditions as well, like poverty, are a problem, but also situations like abuse, homelessness, etc. These pose a lot of complications. So these are also situations that need to be dealt with. Maybe not with technology, but with other scenarios, okay? Anyway, let's see if anyone has any final comments. Okay, I've talked too much already, but any comments that you would like to do? So far, so good, okay? So we can talk later, okay? So, but anyway, anything remotely? Okay, yeah. So I think we can wrap up the session, and remember, this is how you say thank you. So thank you all very much for being here, okay? And hope to see you soon, okay? Thank you all very much. Okay.